I remember a podcast episode years ago where someone talked about they were right-sizing their life, and that expression has stuck with me ever since. And so I think where it began was a few years ago, actually during the pandemic. We ended up selling our camper. My husband had hurt himself the year before and wasn't even able to pull the camper. And so we didn't really use it that summer. So then the next summer when COVID hit, and those campers were going for a really good price, we were like, oh, this is a good time, right? Our camper's 7 years old. We could make some good money. So that's sort of when it started, right? We drove a big truck. The cost of driving that big truck with the price of gas was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Did we need a big truck in the city? I mean, it was helpful, but we didn't need it. And so we decided to go into a smaller car. Just steps like that along the way, just really thinking about where our money was going, but where we could better use it elsewhere. And so, yeah, we were definitely developing and growing our money muscles. And then the move at the end was significantly helpful.
We are streakers. That's not what I want to say. We are on a streak. Those are two very different things. Very different things. We are on a streak of amazing people on this podcast who've gotten the hell out of debt. A couple of weeks ago, we had Cheyenne, Kim. Today, you get to meet Michelle. But I do have to say, remember a couple of weeks ago, we told Cheyenne, like, listen, by the end of this week, you know, she's in phase 3, like pitter patter, let's get at her or whatever.
Yeah, you gave her homework.
And I said, by the end of this week, you're going to buy your ETF or whatever. And she did. She did it within 2 days.
Yeah,
But
she
I
did.
forgot to update everybody. So,
But if you were in the program, which you can access for free right now, you also get access to the online community. And in there, she posted immediately, like right away, as soon as it was done. She's like, my homework is done. Nobody even knew what she was talking about yet. And she's like, everybody, I've done it. She was not messing around.
and then the episode aired like 7 days later.
So congratulations, Cheyenne. That's so good. Like, she continues to do what you teach her, and she is thriving, which is just like the coolest thing to see.
I think the difference between people who actually make things happen and the people who don't are people who implement versus people who think. And we can have all of the knowledge in the world. We can read all of the books on money we want, but if we don't actually take action on any of the things that we're learning, we haven't actually learned a thing because we don't have the results. And she is absolutely somebody who gets results, which further proves that everybody in the program is more on the ball than you and I are because we forgot to update everybody about this.
Just another example of how all the balls are falling.
That's what happens when you're streakers.
Michelle, thank you for being on the podcast with us. Erin thought that we already knew each other. I thought we already knew each other. And you were like, hey, nice to meet you. So this world is very weird, this Get the Hell Out of Debt program, because I feel like I know all of these people and yet we've never met. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I feel the same way. I talk about my friends and my husband's like, but I've never met them. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're all my online friends.
That's right. I love that we can have online friends. Will you tell us a little bit about how you first met Erin and how you found Get the Hell Out of Debt?
Yes, for sure. So I had the most amazing opportunity to be neighbors with a very dear friend for 8, 9-ish years. And when I first met her, she talked a lot about her friend Erin and going to Transformation Weekend each year. I was intrigued. We walked a lot together. We spent time with our kids together, and she talked often about it. And so one year I knew she was heading to Transformation Weekend, and I just asked her if she would mind if I tagged along. I knew a little bit about it and went into that weekend really thinking that I was going to publish my children's book that I had on my heart. And as I sat in the room that weekend, I think it was a Friday night, Erin, I was listening to everybody else's stories and their goals, and a lot about financial goals and getting out of debt. And I thought, wow, I actually have a really big task to take care of before I even go down the road of publishing this book. And so that was the beginning of meeting Erin. And I think I've attended every Transformation Weekend each year since, either, I think mostly online now, actually. But that was the beginning also of trying to get the hell out of debt.
Oh,
that was also the year I was going to stop doing Transformation Weekend. And then the pandemic hit and we were like, I guess we better not stop. So
that was it. It was going to be your last one, right?
You were going to stop doing Transformation Weekend? I can't imagine you stopping ever.
It was growing too big, and I'm an introvert. And I was like, I can't handle a room larger than 500 people on my own. And so I was going to be done. And then the pandemic happened, and we'd already been doing lots of events online, but it was really like to keep people together through the pandemic. We had to, have a sense of community and keep people focused on their goals and stuff like that. So then I never actually retired. I kept going. I do remember that weekend, Michelle. I remember you.
Oh, thank goodness, because I was choked that it was my first one and your last. And I was like, where have I been the last 10 years?
Maybe you were the catalyst, Michelle. You were like, well, I can't let Michelle down. We've got to keep doing them now.
Right.
Tell us about your money situation then. So you have this moment while you're there and you're like, okay, I can't even do any of the things I want to do yet because I've got to take care of my finances. Tell us what kind of shape you were in then.
Yeah, well, it was a little rough. Derek and I both make good money. And then we also spent good money. And, we were double income, no kids. And then our kids came fast and furious. We have 4 children, and they came in a really tight time span, like less than 6 years. And so when our children came, obviously they were and still are our entire world, but we didn't tend to any of the money pieces. And so even though we talked about money all of the time, we never got into the nitty-gritty of looking at our net worth versus what we owed, right? The money came in and we paid our bills, but then we still lived like we had 2 full incomes and no children. And so, yeah, we were living a good life. We had a good time, and we still do.
Big DINK energy, Michelle. You had big DINK energy.
Oh, Derek's going to love hearing that.
But it's very common, right? I think we have to recognize. And also the thing about kids is you actually don't know how much they're going to cost until you have them. And so it's a lot of really unknown. Like I remember thinking I needed all the cute little onesies. And then you become a mom, and with your second one, you're like, we could just wrap him in this tea towel. That'll be close enough, right? So you just don't know until you are a parent. Yeah.
I can picture our daughter's closet, and it was like, those little cute tags where it would divide up like 3 months, 6 months. Like
yes.
I had those.
Yes.
Those. And then number 2 came along, and I was like, we really only need like a laundry basket for him to sleep in, right? But I didn't act like that. I thought it, right?
Yeah.
And then Keri, like your boys are active in sports. Like our 4 kids play a lot of sports. And so I remember saying to Erin one day, like, we don't want to say no to our kids. They like to try everything. They're like, can we try out for the basketball team? I'm like, sure. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, you made it. Okay. Now we're just running all the time and eating meals on the go and things like that. And so it wasn't really until the pandemic hit, we were working away at it a little bit, but we didn't really start to work the program, I don't think, until like fall of 2021.
I remember the moment you got serious because your husband came on Zoom with you and I met him. And I was like, oh, we're getting real, which was great. He's so great. The 2 of you are such a great couple. You're such great parents. But when you were both aligned, it was so cool because it was like, this is really happening. We're going to tackle this.
How did that happen? Did you have to have a lot of hard conversations, your naked money meetings behind the scenes to come together to determine that you were going to do this?
Yes, for sure. Like we did talk money all the time, but I've been thinking a lot about like, how did that come together? And so we've always had investments, like investing into RRSPs, RESPs, right into our pensions. We've always had that. But what was happening when we built a larger home and moved out is that we just didn't have the cash flow. So sure, we were putting money away every month, but we didn't have access to that money. And thank goodness we saw that light and didn't pull anything out. Like we were both really committed to that we weren't pulling out anything to pay off something else. And so I think we've always had conversations, but we were started to see the interest rate increase. We were like, we can't do this anymore. And we were really feeling stuck because I was learning a lot more about investing, like what I could do on my own and what, Derek and I could do together, growing our interest in how can we generate a passive income, all of these things. And we had no room to do that. And so, we're always looking at real estate. We had been looking at moving. We wanted to move closer to our kids' school and just simplify life and have opportunity to do other things. And so Derek was on board with that probably before I was, to be honest. He could see that, whereas I didn't want to leave our cul-de-sac or our amazing neighbors, but we just knew, right? And I think because we're so close and work so well together, it just came to be. But I do remember that call with Erin, and that was pivotal for sure.
I think that you are one of these great couples that really took Erin's advice to heart. And I know a little bit about your story only because I've had to connect you with Erin for some private coaching, right? Behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And you downsized, like you took her advice and you know it's for a season. And you were like, we need to do this for our financial story and we're going to downsize.
Yes, yes. And it makes me emotional because I was thinking just lately about how peaceful it feels and how the stress is gone and how much fun we're having. Like we moved back to our old community, which we loved. It wasn't a plan to move back, but boy, are we glad we did. It's just so much simpler and like I can feel the peace for sure.
So we call that
Yes.
right sizing. We don't call that downsizing. We call
Oh,
it
sorry. Whoopsies.
because no, I'm not correcting you. I'd never
No, but
correct.
I love that. Right size.
Me
We're
too.
right sizing for the time. I like that way better.
Because what was happening is they have these really beautiful incomes, both of them, and they both work very meaningful jobs. And they both have like a vested interest in their children. Like they show up to their kids' extracurriculars, they do all those things. And yes, certainly for a season, if you need to, you can make PB&J sandwiches and do all of that stuff on the road. But sometimes there's value in going to the team dinners. And so we just needed to create more space in their income because they sure as heck had the income. It was just allocated to all the wrong things. It was allocated to this, I mean, let's be serious, gorgeous monstrosity of a home, but it was at a cost to your life.
It was. And we were never there. I felt like we were never home. We're on the road all the time.
It's tricky because her home was stunning. And so you're not only giving up your home, but like the furniture that fits in a certain place and like, you know, the way your daughter's room flows and like all of that stuff to like have almost like a messy chaos for a little while through a move. So it's getting rid of not only the house, which was actually like this major liability, but the things inside it sometimes when you're downsizing, you have to get rid of. And so you handled it all so beautifully. But what you have now is truly a home and a family and a sense of community with all of the people that are involved in all the sports and stuff. You don't have to say no, you get to say yes.
Yes, for sure. I felt limited. There were things coming up and we'd be like, okay, well, it's easier for Derek to take time off work. So he'll go, to Kamloops for baseball. And then, I knew my daughter had a trip coming up for her sport. And, it's easier for Derek to go. It's easier for planning purposes. And it's easier, like I'm not having to lose pay, right? And I was like, I am so sick of that. Like my kids are going to be out the door. I mean, I was happy for him to go and I'm happy to be at work, but I was like, no, I want flexibility. And we just didn't have that anymore. And so, yeah, it feels so much better.
Do you want more? I know you do. Why wouldn't you want more?
More what? What do I want more of?
More of this. Come hang out in the online course, Forget the Hell Out of Debt. The link is in the description. You just got to click it, sign up, and we'll see you in there.
When you were right sizing, how did that conversation go with the kids? Did you explain to them the reason behind it?
Yeah, so they knew, and they are often there for our money conversations. It was a delicate balance for sure, because I didn't want them to take on any stress that is not kid stress. That's adult stuff. Oh,
yeah, Erin's loving that. She's all about protecting the kiddos. You tell them stuff that's appropriate, right? For their
maturity.
Handle.
Yeah, that's right. I think for them, the house was the house. Like that wasn't the big deal. It was more of the cul-de-sac and the community that they didn't want to leave. But they knew we were also moving into a wonderful community and that it was a good start for us and it would allow us freedom and opportunity to do other things and not be just so locked into paying our bills. They wanted that too. It's not that they ever lacked anything, that's for sure, but they could see the excitement. And so we just built on that excitement and what it would be able to provide our family in the future.
Yay. Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad that you were able to get everybody on the same page and make it work for all of you. Okay, I want to know some numbers. Will you share with us how much consumer debt you had and how long it took you to pay off?
We had the equivalent of 2 years of my salary in consumer debt without giving specifics, but that can give you a pretty big ballpark idea of how much consumer debt we had. So if I worked for 2 years and didn't spend a cent of it, we could have paid that off. And so basically like 2.5 years to pay it off. And that was including our move. That was the last of it.
I think that's important to note, because I think some people might hear this and go, oh, she did a one fell swoop. She just sold her house, paid off her debt. That's not what happened. Like, they really built the money muscles along the way, which was also helpful in you making the decision, because I do not advocate for people like doing a fell swoop maneuver unless bankruptcy is on the table, because if you don't build those money muscles, you end up right back in the same situation. But you guys are buff.
Completely.
You're fit. You're walking around the beach in a
We're feeling
string
pretty buff.
bikini. Yeah, you're financially buff.
And that makes me think back, like I remember a podcast episode years ago where someone talked about they were right sizing their life. And that expression has stuck with me ever since. And so I think where it began was a few years ago, actually during the pandemic. We ended up selling our camper. My husband had hurt himself the year before and wasn't even able to pull the camper. And so we didn't really use it that summer. So then the next summer when COVID hit, and those campers were going for a really good price, we were like, oh, this is a good time, right? Our camper's 7 years old. We could make some good money. So that's sort of when it started, right? We drove a big truck. The cost of driving that big truck with the price of gas was crazy.
Mhm.
Did we need a big truck in the city? I mean, it was helpful, but we didn't need it. And so we decided to go into a smaller car. Just steps like that along the way, just really thinking about where our money was going, but where we could better use it elsewhere. And so, yeah, we were definitely developing and growing our money muscles. And then the move at the end was significantly helpful.
What were some of the things, like the key things that you did to pay off your debt?
Yeah, so making those changes, like those lifestyle changes, not camping with a trailer anymore, right? Camping in other ways, much cheaper ways instead. Selling off the truck, selling on Facebook Marketplace. I mean, I keep everything, Keri. And as a sentimental mom, I hold on to everything. So one day, actually, I was looking at this box in the basement. Oh my gosh, this box of baby shoes that I kept for my boys specifically for little keepsakes. Like, those kids wore the nicest shoes. I was like, there's all our money. It's in this box. It's crazy. So just really like saying goodbye to some of those things, lots of those things. My husband can work overtime, so that was helpful. If we knew we had an expense coming up, he could work a shift on the weekend. And saying no to things, really saying no, especially McDonald's or A&W, or, like, actually we have food at home, let's eat at home, was big. Remember, Erin, when you asked me what we spent on food?
I do.
In a month, and I gave you this lowball amount, and you and Derek stared at me like, no, it's like double that.
We don't know until we know. We don't keep track of that, because sometimes we just would rather live in oblivion and not look at that real number, because those numbers are scary when they add up. You actually can't even believe that you let yourself get to that point, right?
Yeah, it's significant. It's funny too, because usually the kids are with me, right? Before school and after school, which is such a blessing. And then we'll, meet up and divide and conquer and head to the sports and whatnot. And I'm the worst, because I'll be like, we're starving. The kids are cranky. We're going through the drive-through, and I'll call Derek and I'll be like, I think we want to go to the drive-through, but tell me we have food at home. And he's like, we have food at home. And I'll be like, okay, we're coming home, right? But it's like, I need him to coach me. Or for him at work, he likes to buy lunch at work. And I'm like, did you buy lunch at work? Like, he has not bought lunch at work for so long, because I'm like, that's like $14 a day. We could do something else with that $14. Like, he's an incredible cook. So we've been really, really good at that.
Amazing. Yeah, it's that compound interest, right? We think it's just $14. And the compound effect of $14 over a long period of time can add up. So it's being mindful, because there are people who it's worth the $14 because of the time it takes. But when you are a good cook and you're in charge of your own ingredients and all of that, it's really hard to justify eating out when just slightly more effort can make you so much wealthier. So important to be informed. Yeah.
Do you remember when you paid off that last payment on your last debt? Do you remember that day? What was the initial reaction?
Incredible, like 1,000 pounds off our shoulders.
What did you do next?
So I've heard this a lot from people when they make that final payment, that they're still living with that mindset of living in, like, they're in debt. So honestly, like this week, I sold $90 worth of things this week because I'm still living in that way of life, which I don't like. I think that's a great thing, but I'm starting to slowly feel the shift. Like I don't have to be doing that as much anymore. But my boys, they're growing like weeds, of course, and they all need new shoes. And I would have just gone out to buy them new shoes. But I was like, okay, so go get the shoes that don't fit. Let's scrub them up. You guys can help. And we'll take that money to buy the new shoes. And they're all kind of staring at me, but off they go because they know, because we talk about it all the time. So I would say, Keri, I'm still transitioning into phase 3.
Yeah.
So happy to be in phase 3.
But I think it's important to note that she's already, the money muscles that she's been building for so long, like they are actively investing, they are paying attention to their retirement. They've been doing that for a long period of time. So the piece that she's letting go of is not what most people have to let go of. She's just letting go of where that resourcefulness is going and being allocated to. But it's not like you have to make this big shift into starting investing because you guys have been doing it. It's so beautiful.
No, and that was the thing. Like we talk about how we were so locked in because we did have our investments, and thank goodness, you know, both of our parents taught us that. Like we both started investing at a young age. So thank goodness for that. Already since we've eliminated our debt, like we've increased our net worth by 70%. And I was like, oh, I wish it was at 100 when we did this podcast, right?
Well, we'll have you back, Michelle. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm like, oh, 70%, that's not enough. Right. And that's my mind as an achiever, right? I'm like, I wanted it to be 100 by this morning. So yeah, we have some big investment goals.
But that's just 70% since you've paid off your debt, right? That's not from the beginning when you first started. So I still think that's very impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we had a really decent, good net worth before. We just had a lot of liabilities too.
Right. Right. But I just wanted to say that I'm so proud of you. And through this whole process, Keri, I just want you to know she still did achieve her goal of publishing her children's book.
I was going to ask, did that eventually come a thing?
We will link in the show notes for everybody.
Oh, thank you so much. I did. And this was the thing because Derek and I were so, you know, you only live once. So like we were living a good life. But then my sons, who I had created the story for, I just made it up one night while lying in bed, and they loved it. And so every night they asked and asked and asked for me to say it out loud. And then it was really my 11-year-old who was like, Mom, you keep saying you're going to publish that book. You're not doing it. And I was like, someday, I'll do it someday. And I thought, someday is not a day of the week. It's never going to happen unless I do it. And Erin really helped me through that process. And I did it.
Oh,
I did it. I'm a
congratulations.
published author.
That's so great. And those kiddos, right? They keep us to task. That's for sure. I love that your son did that for you.
He did. He really did.
Before we go, tell me what you're teaching your kids about money.
Oh, goodness. We're talking money all the time. So we've taken them through Erin's course, how to teach your kids about money. They all have their own net worth spreadsheet. So we're looking at that all the time.
Erin's cheersing.
And they don't complain. Like they come, right? They're counting their coins. I'm like, let's go to the bank. It's interesting to see their different personalities and how they each manage their money. It makes me think of my own siblings, and I think everybody has a different story. And so it's really interesting to see how their personalities play into it, but they all willingly do it and they talk about it all the time. And they love Erin. Remember when you sent them those money clips? They love her. If I want my kids to get downstairs in the morning quickly, I put on your podcast so I can listen to the two of you. And my boys are down in a flash.
Well, hello, Ella, Maddox, Jace, and Kai. We are very sorry for the bad words that we might say sometimes on this podcast, but we love you. We're very proud of you. We love your mom and dad. We're very proud of them too. And I want to encourage you guys to keep up all of the work that you're doing with your money, because you are going to be very smart with money as you grow. And you're going to be teaching all of your friends and your future children about money. So it's very important that you keep it up. And kids, we're going to send you each one of the teal ceramic money bunnies that we have. I'm going to drop them off for you. And then it's like kind of like a Starbucksy tumbler. Now on the front of the tumbler, kids, it says quick and dirty. So you have to explain to your teachers what that means. It's a financial term. Okay. It's not anything inappropriate. But we're really proud of you.
I love that they're listening to us, and also sorry, Michelle.
Yes. Sorry
for what comes out of our face. But this would be great. Wouldn't, Erin, we could have a second generation come on the podcast. Like these kiddos could be like, Michelle's on today And now we'll have her kids on next.
When they're all grown up, this is what the podcast is going to sound like. Hello, everybody. Thank you for logging in today. We're going to talk to Ella, Maddox, Jace, and Kai, who started
Wait, I got to
listening.
take my joint cream first.
Empty my colostomy bag, and then we're going to get right to it.
Congratulations,
You're
Michelle.
awesome.
We're so happy for you. We love the legacy that you're building for these kiddos too. Just to wrap up, will you tell us what Erin has meant to you and what Get the Hell Out of Debt means to you?
Erin has changed our lives. I'm sure you've heard that a lot, but she has literally changed the trajectory of our lives. She has just been incredibly supportive, so wise and compassionate and hilarious. If I had met Erin years ago, I feel like our story would be so different. The way that she weaves humor into a very serious topic. We laugh now because I say to my husband, I am such a money nerd. And he's like, you were always a bit of a nerd. I was like, I know, but now I am a money nerd. Like, I am obsessed. I could go on and on. I could probably write a book about it.
I got to get another shirt now, and this one's got to say money nerd on it. Like, I'm going to have a whole wardrobe of just things people have said on this podcast that would make a fun t-shirt. So money nerds is next.
Also, you never have to decide what to wear. You can just go into your t-shirt closet, pull out a shirt. You're ready to go. It's like a capsule wardrobe with meaning.
Can we also have like a Get the Hell Out of Debt headband or something, or like perhaps like a face mask so that I don't have to do my hair or my face, and I can just wear swag, just cover all my parts, and that's it. That's it.
Yes. Please sign up at the link in the show notes to get your Get the Hell Out of Debt balaclava.